guys. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a weakness that I see in many Pyraminxers solves, and this weakness is solving the tips. People all the way from very slow people to even pretty fast people will have trouble solving the tips quickly and fluidly, and it tends to just disrupt their solve, and it's not really that hard of a problem to fix, so I'm just going to share with you a few strategies that I have about it. First off, let me demonstrate exactly what the problem is that a lot of Pyraminxers have with the tips. I'm just going to do a solve for you and kind of do it as an example of what I see a lot of people doing. If you noticed, I solved all the tips at the end, and I solved them only one at a time. This requires lots of rotations, and it makes a long pause at the end of the solve when it shouldn't take too long. It generally just detracts from the fluidness of the solve, and it makes it harder to turn fast. So how do you fix this problem? Well, the first and most simple way to do this is to change when you're solving the tips. Instead of solving all the tips at the very end of the solve, the best way to do it, I think, is to solve one or two tips at the beginning of the solve, in like the first couple moves, and then one or two tips as the last few moves of the solve. And this way you're never trying to solve too many tips at once, and you're also never trying to solve tips in the middle of the solve, which will end up making awkward regrips. So again, let me just do an example. I'm going to this time solve the tips in better placing, so I'm going to solve these two tips right at the beginning, like that. So now I have two tips solved. Now I'll finish up my top, and then I'll do my last layer, and then solve these two tips. Another thing you'll notice that I did differently in that solve is that instead of using only one hand and rotating to get up to all the tips, I actually used both hands to turn the tips. This also helps a ton from your times because it basically just eliminates cube rotations, which is good for your TPS no matter what puzzle you're on. There is one other basic rule that I follow for the tips that I try to always do on every single solve, and that is that by the time I'm at my last layer, I should always have the tip at the back solved. And this just means that once I'm done with the solve, I can solve these three tips, which are easy to reach, and I don't have to reach back here and do this one. Another technique that is not only faster but looks really cool is to use slice moves to solve the tips. So one of the best slice moves is this case right here, where I need to do a U and then a U prime for the tip. What I can do is I can basically just do the two moves at the same time by doing, it's hard to explain, but I'm keeping my finger right here on this tip and just pushing with my thumb like that. And I know that looks hard to do, but actually once you're used to it, it's not that bad. And you can also do it the other way like this. I'm going to reach across with this finger right here and go like that. And if you wanted to be really tricky, I can't do this, is you can actually hold this tip right here. But I can't do that. So the very last thing I'm going to talk about for the tips is doing, there's not really a name for them, but basically solving two tips at once using both hands and without regripping. This is useful after the entire body is solved, so after you finish the last layer. In this case, after I do the last layer like that, I can easily regrip to these two tips, and I can just actually turn the entire body of the Pyraminx like this. So it's like this. So those are basically the techniques I use to be fast at the tips, and I hope that was helpful. It's a problem that really annoys me when I see it in solvers, so I really wanted to make a video on how to get better at it. So Mitch Lane, I hope you are no longer a noob at the tips, and that's it. Thanks for watching.